The Secrets We Keep. Chapter 2. The Unspoken Truth. Part 3 Final. The screen of Eleanor's phone glowed aggressively in the dim rotunda, casting sharp shadows across her face. Julian walked over, his expression grim. "Put it on speaker." Eleanor took a steadying breath, sliding her thumb across the screen. She brought the phone near the center table. "Good morning, Richard," Eleanor said, her voice smooth, polite, and completely devoid of fear. There was a brief pause on the other end, followed by the familiar, low chuckle of Richard Sterling, a sound she had once respected, but now recognized as the calculated purr of a predator. "Eleanor, my dear," Sterling said, the background hum of a luxury London vehicle faint behind his voice. "I didn't expect you to be awake at 4 in the morning. I trust the dreary weather of Oakridge hasn't dampened your spirits." "The coastal air is surprisingly refreshing," Eleanor replied coolly. "What can I do for you at this hour, Richard?" "I had a rather troubling call from our legal dispatch an hour ago," Sterling said, his tone shifting subtly from polite warmth to cold corporate edge. "It seems the demolition paperwork for the Starlight site was flagged. Apparently, there was a minor disturbance at the property earlier tonight. Some local delinquents trying to vandalize the estate, no doubt." Eleanor looked at Julian, whose jaw was clenched so hard the muscles in his neck strained. "Local delinquents," Eleanor said lightly. "They seemed remarkably well informed about our firm's internal acquisition timelines for mere vandals." A beat of heavy silence hung over the line. When Sterling spoke again, the mask of the paternal mentor was gone. "Let's not play games, Eleanor. You're a brilliant architect, but you're an amateur when it comes to the real estate market. The town of Oakridge has been a dead weight on the northern coast for 30 years. Tearing down that crumbling library and breaking ground on the coastal resort is worth £80 million to our firm. Your promotion to managing director is contingent on that deed being signed and filed by noon today." "And if I refuse to sign?" Eleanor asked, her gaze fixed on the open stone vault beneath the North Star mosaic. "You won't refuse," Sterling replied with absolute confidence. "Because if you do, I will terminate your partnership with Vance & Co. immediately. I will invoke the non-compete clause you signed 3 years ago, freeze your equity shares, and ensure no architectural firm in the United Kingdom or Europe ever hires you again. You will walk away with nothing." He paused, letting the threat settle in the cold night air. "Sign the deed, Eleanor. The courier will arrive at the library at 9 o'clock with the revised paperwork. Be a smart businesswoman. Don't throw your entire life away over a pile of rotting wood and your grandfather's dead sentimentality." "My grandfather wasn't sentimental, Richard," Eleanor said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, icy whisper. "He was patient. And unlike you, he built things meant to last." Without waiting for a response, Eleanor ended the call. She stared down at the dark screen for 2 seconds, then tossed the phone onto the table. 9 o'clock, Julian said, his eyes burning. "That gives us 5 hours. Then let's not waste another minute," Eleanor said, grabbing the industrial work lamp. Together, they descended the narrow stone steps beneath the floor. The air grew noticeably colder as they reached the subterranean vault. It was a reinforced chamber made of dry stacked granite blocks, unaffected by the damp ocean air. In the center of the room sat a heavy iron-bound maritime chest, embossed with the royal crest of Queen Victoria. Eleanor approached the chest. The lock on the front was a heavy brass combination dial, engraved with letters rather than numbers. 4 letters, Julian observed, shining his light on the dial. Eleanor thought back to her grandfather's ledger, to the final line Arthur had written, "The charter does not sleep in paper, it is sealed in stone beneath the light that guides the lost. Look to the North Star when the clock strikes true." The grandfather clock in the study was frozen, Eleanor remembered aloud. The hands were stopped at 4:15. What are the navigational coordinates for the harbor's true north? True north on the old maritime charts was marked as true, Julian said, his eyes widening. TRUE. Eleanor turned the heavy brass dials, aligning the letters one by one, TRUE. A deep, mechanical clack resonated from inside the heavy iron casing. Julian gripped the heavy iron handles and pulled upward with all his strength. The heavy lid swung open on well-oiled internal hinges. Inside, resting on a bed of dark blue velvet, was a long, cylindrical case made of solid, polished silver, sealed at both ends with wax bearing the crown's royal seal. Beside it lay the original 1842 Crown Charter parchment, perfectly preserved, bearing the signature of the Royal Admiralty and the clear, undeniable declaration, "To Arthur Vance and his lawful heirs in perpetuity, as a sovereign public trust for the people of Oakridge. No commercial sale, seizure, or demolition shall be lawful under Crown authority without the unanimous consent of the town trustees and the Vance lineage." Beside the parchment lay a second document, a private ledger from 1974 containing the signed confession and wire transfer receipts proving that Richard Sterling's father had forged the municipal sales registry. Eleanor picked up the royal charter. Her hands did not shake. "This doesn't just protect the library, Julian," Eleanor said, her face illuminated by the bright white glow of the work lamp. "This makes Sterling's entire northern harbor development illegal. It proves fraud dating back 50 years. Julian looked at the documents, then up at Eleanor, a slow, fierce smile spreading across his face. "So," Julian said, leaning against the iron chest. "What happens when the courier arrives at 9 o'clock? Eleanor looked down at the royal seal, then up toward the stairs leading to the grand hall of the library. "At 9 o'clock, the courier won't be meeting a frightened granddaughter," Eleanor said, her voice ringing with the authority of an architect who had finally found her true foundation. "He'll be meeting the sole trustee of Oakridge. And at 10 o'clock, we take this to the High Court." End of Chapter 2. YouTube outro cliffhanger note. The truth is finally in Eleanor's hands, but Richard Sterling has an empire to protect and nothing to lose. What will happen when dawn breaks over Oakridge? Find out in Chapter 3, The Stand at Sunrise.